This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your friend with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, my lovely lumps. Or should I say lovely labs? I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge to yarn about all things sexuality, womanhood, holistic health, and everything in between. Your legs. Can never help myself. Anyway, we're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up. You're about to receive the sex ed that you never had and have a bloody good laugh while you're at it. Before we get stuck in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Menang people. It's an absolute privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content on Noongar country, and I pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, if you're all ready, let's flap and do this. Oh God, is there such thing as too many vagina jokes in the one intro? Whatever, I'm leaving it in. It's my podcast.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up the couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
Ah, shit.
Far out, woman. What's got sand in your clam now?
Pew, 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 pew. Sandy my clam. Hello, labial ledgehammers. How you doing? Welcome back to the lounge for another Sandy Clam epi. I've got a friend of mine, Heidi, as a guest today. She's a sex and intimacy coach who I've known for a few years now and who's always been just such a massive supporter of me and my work, and I'll often get hilarious little voices or vulnerable anecdotes that she sends me and just messages of support and check-ins. So I just super duper appreciate her friendship and her opinion and her views are really great. So I was like, all right, let's do a Sand in My Clam episode and chat about something that's close to her heart and quite relevant to her focus in her work. So welcome, Hides.
Hi. Nice to be here.
So do you want to tell us what your idea was for a topic that we're going to chat about today?
Well, yeah, absolutely shits the hell out of me when people think that women after menopause can't, don't want sex, because it's absolute bullshit. I've never had better sex in my life. Mm-hmm, so, yeah, it's kind of like it's in all, yes. If you Google it, it's in all, it just pops up why women don't want sex after menopause, all this kind of stuff. And there's hardly anything about what actually being more interested in sex or having better sex or being able to navigate the changes to make sure you have better sex and things like that. So, yeah.
Totally. And this is sort of emerging. I remember getting an email from you ages ago just sort of saying that quite naturally this niche was emerging for your work around like sex and libido in later life, right?
Yeah, and also couples who aren't having sex. So the niche is like it's often to do with peri or menopause, post-menopause, but often it's men in midlife as well because they seem to have things go on as well and need a little bit of help. So I think it all comes down to people being really, really busy and stressed, and that affects your sex life. So maybe in midlife things kind of get a bit more intense in terms of sex and career and all that kind of stuff maybe takes over or other things that are really important to people. But so it's kind of a niche that's evolved through what my experience is, but also just kind of seeing a gap from people. I've got good friends that don't have sex anymore because they've been through menopause and they don't think they're meant to have sex anymore. And they're like, oh, that part of my life's over. And I'm like, no, it's not over. It's a mindset thing,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I spoke about this on an episode with Jane Hardwick Collins that I did on
menopause, actually. And we were talking about, this narrative that we've all been sold and, bought into, that once you're older, once you go through menopause, you don't want sex, your libido disappears, you dry up and your vag is all atrophied and, your ovaries are prunes. And I was sort of talking about how even though that is like categorically not true, like there's actually I think there's quite a few studies that actually shows that in like healthy, happy women, and that is the key, being healthy and happy as well, because health issues will come into libido. But yeah, healthy, happy women, there's no significant decline in libido once they've gone through menopause, no decline in like frequency of intercourse, genital responsiveness, ease or difficulty reaching orgasm, sexual satisfaction, all of that. But even though that's what the studies are saying, we all believe that, old people don't have sex, or like once you've gone through menopause, you don't want to have sex because you can't procreate anymore. So like, if you're not fertile, where's the drive to have sex? And that mindset makes us therefore not feel as sexy or sensual, or not feel like having sex, because it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy and we're kind of already written it off and we're like resigned to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this kind of thing where that, it's patriarchal. We're no longer baby making machines walking around. So therefore we can't possibly want sex, because all we really wanted sex for was having babies anyway, or all this kind of bullshit. And sure, the libido changes in that I no longer ovulating. I no longer have to lock myself in a room on the full moon because I'm going to make the wrong decision, because that was me. Before I had kids, I would be like so horny when I was ovulating that I'd make some really bad decisions. Don't have that anymore. There's not much of there's a little bit of something at the full moon still, but it's not like a massive peak. But it's more that my libido and a lot of my friends, who are having good sex at this age group, it's more kind of just this low hum. So you can decide to act on it rather than have to act on it. And it doesn't dip as much. You don't have those days where you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I just don't want sex. You don't have that for some reason. So you just have this little hum going on, was like, oh, yeah, I kind of feel good in my body, could have sex, could self-pleasure, or could paint a picture, or, get a job, or, whatever you need to use that creative energy for. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess because you don't have the fluctuations of hormones, and that can be quite tumultuous. That can, they can surge and make you horny and fuck people, make terrible decisions, and then they can completely abandon you, and all of a sudden you have no libido. And that's part of having a menstrual cycle. But once those hormones disappear or level out, you are on a much more even keel. And so it sort of plateaus, allowing you to have more, I guess, more
consistency.
What do I want to say there?
Consistency,
I guess,
maybe.
Yeah, consistency and agency over your, like you're in control a bit more, rather than being ruled by your hormones or by the fluctuations. And a really cool fact, I think I said this in the menopause one as well, but regarding hormones with menopause, FSH, the neurotransmitters, FSH and LH, so follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, once you've gone through menopause, they actually stay permanently elevated for the rest of your life. So yes, all the, the estrogen and testosterone, all these other hormones that are fluctuating throughout your menstruating years, they aren't doing that anymore. But the FSH and LH actually are really high during ovulation, which is when you're the most fertile and when you're the most horny. So there's not like a study that's like, this definitely means that them being present in menopause means you're going to be more horny, but it's a bit of a correlation that I know a few researchers have pointed out, that because those are quite high during menopause and they're also quite high during ovulation, it would make sense if you do still retain a fair bit of desire to have sex, because you're not completely devoid of every single hormone,
Yeah, and maybe nature just wants us to have some pleasure, because pleasure is so good and healing for us, and it's, really a good thing. I do notice the absolute change in myself from having less estrogen in my system. Like, I've just got so much less fucks. So, like, I just do not give a fuck anymore. And it's so empowering. I'm like, no, like the word no is so much easier now that I don't have this hormone of accommodation and sacrifice. And so that's something nice for your younger listeners to look forward to, because really it's like so empowering stepping into it. Also to the point of being like, to use your term, more of a pillow princess. Like I'm like, you can come over if you pleasure me, but no, I'm not giving you a blowjob. You know what I mean? Like, it's about me now for the first time. It's about me rather than doing all the things to accommodate someone else. And that's across the board in my life, but also very much in bed. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was what I was going to say is like once you don't have that sort of people pleasing, putting other people's needs before your own and self-sacrificing that comes from the estrogen making you more accommodating, I feel like you're not going to, in every aspect of your life, you're not going to take any shit and you're going to be a lot more discerning, but you're going to be more discerning about the lovers that you have. You're going to be, able to think more clearly about your standards and what you will and won't settle for in sex. And therefore, probably you're going to be having way better sex. One, because you're better at choosing partners and you're not going to put up with any bullshit. Two, you know what you want. You've had a shitload of opportunity to practice and gain experience because sex is a skill, pleasure is a learnt skill. So the older you get, makes sense to me that the better at sex you get and the better at choosing partners, the better you know your own body, the better that you understand your needs and what you like, what you don't like, the better you are at communicating that with a lover. Like all of that pretty much like translates to me as just you've had way more practice and you're way more familiar with your body and your needs and with sex in general. So I kind of feel like sex should surely get better as you get older.
Yeah, I've really been having sex for a long time now. Really, when I think of it that way, it's, many decades. And also there is a shift in the kind of sex you want. Like I'm less focused on my orgasm now, even though I can have an orgasm or 10 or however many that happens depending on what's going on. It's really not like I'm not hankering after that orgasm anymore. I'm hankering after the subtle pleasure. That's what gets me going. All the little, I don't know, it's something about my pussy after menopause. I just feel more than I used to. So I don't know why. I feel more pleasure. And I don't know if it's the training I've done or if it's something in myself, but there's more subtle pleasure, and those subtle pleasures are epic. They're not like someone's banged you over the head with a brick kind of orgasm. It's just this, this beautiful, energetic kind of stuff going on. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like one of the big barriers to female pleasure that lots of studies cite is fear of getting pregnant.
Absolutely.
The consequences. You don't have that, so you're not in your head worrying about that. Also, a massive barrier to pleasure, that I talk about with clients all the time, is self-esteem and worrying about like what people think of you, what you look like, what you taste like, how you're performing. I feel like as you get older, you give less fucks and you've got higher self-esteem. Maybe not always, but, it would make sense that because you're less distracted by these pesky fears and insecurities that we are plagued with in our youth, you're going to be having better sex because you're not distracted and you're able to be present with the pleasure in your body and not be stressed about that other shit,
Absolutely. And just being more communicative. Yeah, for sure. But not being able to get pregnant is fucking amazing. The only other time it's like is when you're pregnant. It's really great having sex when you're pregnant because you can't get pregnant because you already are. It's kind of a bit like that. Like you've done it. Yeah. You've had all that. And so now you've got this freedom. But the other thing, the communication is like, like I will point out to a lover, I'll be like, hey, that scar tissue there from, birthing. And I don't care. It's like I'm showing a scar on my hand or something. It's just like, this is an area that needs, more gentle, or this is, I need extra foreplay because of this, whatever. I can't even imagine when I was younger talking about something that was,
Yeah.
less than perfect about my pussy and just pointing out, hey, go gentle,
Mm-hmm.
and it's empowering to be able to say, hey,
totally.
this is a pussy that's had a couple of babies and, she's a bit, because scar tissue can play up a little bit after menopause because,
Yeah.
things shift. So you do, if you do have some episiotomy or tearing scars or something, you absolutely have to be more warmed up than when you were younger, which is great because so-called foreplay. I mean, is there a better word for foreplay? Pre-penetrative sex is epic and we want as much of it as we want and can get.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And you're not going to be able to, I feel like, when you're all young and just drooping all the time. And I mean, I don't think I was ever I'm not a super wet person. It takes quite a lot and that's just differs from person to person. But a lot of people that I speak to are like, I remember when I used to be young and I just got so wet so easily. And I used to be able to just have sex straight away. And I was like, I don't think that's a good thing. That means that you are having sex before, like penetrative sex, before your body, is ready and foregoing all of the other stuff that you could be doing. Whereas it's almost like you can't get away with that once you're older. You have to be more discerning and you have to respect your body and make sure that your pussy is treated with reverence and care and time is taken. You've got to go at your body's pace. Whereas I feel like when we're younger, and this is with anything, it's like we think we're invincible, we throw our bodies around, we take risks, we jump into things before we're ready. It's like that with sex, and that's not actually a great way of going about it.
And maybe that's why the sex is better after menopause or, once things start shifting. If you are, have enough agency to say, hey, I need 30 minutes of cunnilingus, thank you very much. If you are able to say that, because I certainly wasn't when I was young, you'd get the obligatory little licking to make you wet for a minute or 3 if you were lucky and then ram it on in. And it's, there's no fucking way I would do that now. And I have, in the last few years had a few lovers that have kind of tried that on me. And I'm just like, wait a minute, mate. No way. I'm not ready. Oh, I thought you were ready. No, I'm not ready. It's so much more than that, Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Babe Towns. So sorry to interrupt, but I simply had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that you've got to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the potty to mingle in. And there you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies or discounts for offerings from guests who've been interviewed on the podcast, inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, and support from a community of labial legends. I also have an account on the fab new app Sunroom, which is a platform created by women for women and non-binary folk, and where there's no shadow banning or censorship of sex-positive content, unlike with the other platforms that I'm on. So you can hit up my Sunroom for extra content and real and raw life updates, because I'll be sharing on there from now on all of the stuff that I can't post anywhere else. My vision for both of these is that they become really supportive, educational, and hilarious resources for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions that you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes and I'll hopefully see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
So why do you think that there is this misconception that, that older people don't like sex?
I think it's partially, and I don't have this issue of thinking about old people having sex and being disgusted. I'm not disgusted by that. I'm just not. And I actually don't think I'm old either, but whatever. I'm 52. But yeah,
not
it's
old.
No, just like you're only as old as you feel, and I feel like I might be midlife. I want to live to 108. So, but also I think it comes down to that whole thing as we think, we have been conditioned to think that we're here for men's pleasure, we're here for making babies and continuing the species, and this kind of old patriarchal stuff. So it's probably a bit of that. You know what? I think that women seem to think that they're going to lose interest in sex more than men think that the women are going to, because I attract younger lovers often, and I'm trying to stop that because there's not much scope for me hanging out with 38-year-olds. For some reason I attract 38-year-olds, but they only want to shag an older woman, really, whatever. I mean, it might be nice for a few months, but exactly after a while you're like, hey, I wouldn't mind a bit of some commitment or something. It's not going to happen with a young guy. Maybe they're the ones that are commitment phobes as well. Who knows? But yeah, they don't seem to think that women my age are not up for it.
Well, I think because also, regardless of age, there's already a narrative that we all buy into that women have lower libido than men in general. So then we're thinking, I've already got a lower libido now. Once I get, go through menopause, it's going to just give up the ghost on me. So it's kind of like the messages that we've been receiving our entire lives, even if we don't buy into that when we're younger, because we're like, well, that's bullshit. I do have a high libido, or I do love sex. We're still probably anticipating it going away when we get older, for some reason. Yeah. And I think like the whole thing about people being grossed out by old people having sex, like totally. I reckon that's a big part of it, because we're sold this, idea of conventional beauty and sensuality. We think of it in this super narrow way that's like driven by the media and consumerism, and we think that means youthfulness. And so the idea of being old isn't beautiful or sensual, and therefore sex is gross when we think of that. And I'm just like, ugh, bullshit.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so I'm very careful with who I follow on Instagram. I make sure I follow people who are not like me. I follow people who I aspire to be like when I'm older. I'm also a yoga teacher, so I only follow like black women yogis because they are so underrepresented. Follow people who've got various disabilities and things like that, just to have in my feed a range of variety of humans, including a lot of older women who are fully in their sexuality. And there's this, I don't know her name, it's an Italian name, but there's this much older woman, Italian lady, who's like getting out and doing like twerking and stuff like this. She's like a grandma, and it's just so refreshing because she's right in her body. She's right in her feminine sexual nature, but she's, she'd be 75 or something. It's great. So
yeah, amazing. I love that. And something else that I was thinking of, I heard it on a podcast recently. They were talking about how back in the day, Hippocrates believed that the uterus was this predatory thing that wandered around the body seeking moisture from a man's semen to create pregnancy, and it had this life of its own, and it wandered around the body. It had this need for seed that caused the woman who had the pesky womb, the desirous, womb, to want sex because, that womb be thirsty. And obviously to this like prudish kind of, these prudish man babies back then, this was preferable to attributing hormones and sexual desire or sexual agency to the women themselves. And so...
oh, yeah, you can't have a woman wanting something,
No, it just must be her like uterus that's making her want sex only to create a baby. So then that sort of set in motion this narrative around female sexuality that if your womb wasn't able to bear children anymore, it wouldn't desire sex. Therefore, a woman wouldn't have a libido once she was older because she's not fertile anymore. And I feel like that narrative that started there, that really pervades our society even now in varying ways. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to this whole thing of women as being passive and pure. This whole pure thing, I don't know if it's Christian or what, but this idea that we are pure and unsullied. So if you get a woman who's slutty and wants it all the time, that's just something, scary and a bit demonic or Kali-esque about that. And sure, one half of culture is going to love it anyway, because we don't all do it as we're told. But yeah, to be able to attribute it to that gobbling up uterus that wants everything. And also along this, I feel that there's a link there. You know how we're told we are hormonal beings, and we are very hormonal beings in a way, but that kind of idea that you're hormones are to blame for libido.
Yeah.
And once you really don't have these crazy levels of hormones and change in your hormones and you still have libido, well, then that kind of disproves it in a way. So, which, of course, contradicts what I said earlier about having to lock myself away when I was ovulating when I was younger. But
well, they play a role, but they're not the be-all and end-all.
They're not.
Like, they're important and they do contribute, but it's not like our libido purely stems from our hormones and hormones alone. We like pleasure. It's, healthy for us to have sex. I feel like, if you were to, in a nutshell, just debunk the myth that older people don't like having sex or don't have a libido. You kind of did in the beginning. You're like, I love sex. But yeah, what would you want to sort of leave listeners with as a bit of a message around this topic? What do you tell clients? What do you find yourself ranting about at dinner parties?
It's kind of, for me, I think it's just that we've been sold a lie, and for whatever reason. And, we know we've been sold a lie in so many aspects of life. And this is one that we just, I don't know, role modeling is good too, to be able to talk about that you're having great sex after your periods have stopped. Really, your periods have stopped. That's all that's really, there's some changes, but you still got everything going on. And even for friends and clients of mine who've no longer have uterus and ovaries and things like that because they've had hysterectomies, they can still have a beautiful sex life too. It's really about being comfortable with yourself and embodied. I think embodiment is the key, like being in your body. Yeah. Being in your body is what makes for great sex.
And it's a way to feel connection. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. It's pleasure, it's connection with yourself, with other people. It's like there's so many more reasons to have sex other than just to conceive, or to, look conventionally sexy. So it doesn't make sense to me that, there's no reason why people should or would stop desiring sex or stop having sex at a certain age just because of hormones or just because they don't look like this conventional idea of beauty or sexuality anymore. So, nailed it, babe. Love that.
And actually, I just remembered something as well. I do remember a few years ago saying to my mum, I looked at her and I said, Mum, I don't know if I'm ever going to want sex again. Right? So now, however, this was at a time in my life that I didn't even know I was in perimenopause, but everything shut down. I just wasn't interested in sex. And this was because I was highly stressed, highly stressed because my partner was very sick and dying of cancer. And all my energy wasn't going into that, And so, thank God I started wanting it again. But it's kind of interesting that you don't have to blame your hormones on your lack of desire and arousal and interest. It's almost always something else. It's some other aspect of your life that needs that energy.
Biggest cause.
Yeah, and having to focus on things, your babies and stuff is a huge one as well, but not for everyone. You always hear of people who have lots of babies all in a row because they are horny after, we're all different. But, having that, knowing that lack of libido isn't always hormonal is a really, really good thing for people to just take in and let it sink in. Rather than just assume, because I have male clients come to me and say that they've got no libido. They'll go off. I'll send them off to get a test just to make sure they've got their testosterone's fine. It's just that other things have gotten their way, and they need to come back into their body.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, beautiful. Well, how about we end the epi on a TMI story? Because I know you got the goods.
TMI, we love it. TMI, we love it.
Okay, so how do I begin on this one? Okay, so I've got a good story because I think you have shared another good one with your audience before, and I've got a few. It's hard for me to say TMI because most of the time I am fully telling people the wrong thing all the time anyway.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But this one is back in when I lived in New York and had this beautiful lover, and I think he was the one who introduced me to anal sex, and we'd had anal sex a few days before, and we were just kind of hanging out in his bedroom, in his loft in Brooklyn, and I found a little sesame seed on the bed, and I just kind of licked my finger and picked it up and popped it in my mouth, and as I bit into the sesame seed, I realised that it had been through my body and out the other side. Because it was just poo. It was like I bit into a sesame seed, but it just was poo. And it was pretty funny. Because you know how sesame seeds do that.
Did it taste like?
Just tasted like poo.
How did you know? You were just like, that tastes like poo.
It was just like, that was not a sesame seed. Yeah, I don't know how we know, but you know it, I promise you. Must be in age or something. But but yeah, because you know sesame seeds, if you don't chew them properly, I think they come through whole. But yes, they
totally, yeah.
So there's a little TMI for you, a story that I don't think I've told anyone before.
Great. Well, I and the listeners are very grateful and honoured that you felt to share that now. I'm sure that was an absolute doozy. Oh my God. Worst night. That's nightmare fuel. That is. Awesome though. Good on you. I want to remind, I'm pretty sure I shared your other story, Heidi, on an episode I did with Melissa Vranges on having difficulty orgasming with a partner. I'm pretty sure it was that episode, and it was so fucking good. I mean, would you mind sharing it again just so that we have a little bonus one in case people didn't hear it?
Hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also have a Sunroom profile over on the Sunroom app, as I've mentioned. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps, because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. And I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later.
The finger sniffing one?
Oh, yeah. So my late man had this thing where we'd either he'd slide his finger down his butt crack, or maybe I'd slide my finger into my front of my undies or wherever. But anyway, so we had a nice smelly finger, and then we'd be in like a social setting, and I'd just kind of lean over and wrap my arm around him and just wave my finger under his nose, or he'd do it to me. And so you're sitting there having a cup of tea with your great aunt or something, and then you're smelling your partner's finger, and you can smell it's their butt crack or sweaty G-string smell or whatever. So, and So is that the one that you meant?
Yeah, that's the one. I just love how playful, I think anyone that's in a relationship where you can just be so silly and almost a bit juvenile, like just the crudeness and the grossness and the I love that.
Yeah.
So when you sent that to me, I just laughed so hard, and I told my partner, and I was a little bit worried he might start adopting the same strategy, because we do all sorts of stuff like that as well. I just had to share it with him because I knew he'd find it so funny.
Particularly juvenile, I think we were, and I haven't met any guy like this since, but you'd catch a fart in your hand and throw it at the other's face, and all that kind of stuff. All that
God, stuff. We do that. Oh, we literally play, we'll fart in hand, then he'll sprinkle it on my pancakes or something, or he'll fart and then throw it at me, and I'll pretend that I've court it like a basketball and like spin it on my finger and then like volleyball it back or like hit it with a tennis racket. And we kind of just have like this fart tennis going on that we try to come up with creative ways of throwing fart. And he's even have you seen Avatar, like The Last Airbender? He's decided that he's going to behave like a fart bender, and he'll like stand in this stance and fart in his hand and then sort of whoosh his arms around his body in this kind of like very Avatar-esque or Dragon Ball Z-esque kind of way, and then like, you know, zoom it over to me like an airbender, but a fart bender. Anyway, you'd probably have to have seen the show to get that reference, but it's funny. So yeah, I feel like we have a very similar humor dynamic in our relationship to what it sounds like you guys had.
Yeah, and yeah, juvenile is just the operative word here, I think. But yeah, got to keep it light.
It's fun. It's fun. All right. Well, where can the listeners find your work? Because you have you've got an Instagram account with awesome content. You do really great work in the world. So what do you want to plug?
Yeah, so I'm at True Intimacy, so true.intimacy. And my niche is kind of helping couples who aren't having sex start having sex again, and individuals who aren't having sex. So, you know, working with shutdown and physical shutdown like vaginismus and things like that as well. Men who've got a lot of stuff at the moment. I've got a lot of male clients who've been shamed by their partner, and therefore, you know, like maybe once or twice didn't get an erection, and then suddenly they've been shamed in some way by their partner and it's become a thing. So working to undo that, because I really do think that women can be pretty insensitive in bed, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's where you can find me, and my website's HeidiTrue.com. So that's another place you can find me.
Beautiful. All right. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Heidi.
Thank you.
And that's it, darling hearts. Thank you for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. And in the meantime, if you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch, because that, my dear, is a downright act of sex-positive feminist activism. And you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. Also, I'm always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, or guest suggestions. So feel free to get in touch via my website at freyagraph.com, or say hey over on Insta. My handle is Freya_graph_YMT, and I seriously hope you're following me on there, because damn, we have fun. We have fun. Anyway, later labial legends. I'll see you next time.